fundamentals are not sound. I'm just not there on the math yet. I don't see it. The reason why I don't see it is institutional knowledge. Past is prologue. So no, I'm not being cautious or wary. I'm being prudent. The world famous phrase of watch what they do, ignore what they say. I have concerns on the math. You have parties out there who are newer to how the proceeds get used. Back in the day, there were some particular parties amongst those who call themselves Moorish that were saying things like, we need to get the quote-unquote phone books and count all the B's and L's we could find so we can gather all of them together for a tax base. Gather all these disparate folks coast to coast in the North-Amexem to establish a tax base. With what plan? A tax base? Collecting taxes? Settled by who? How's that even settled upon? Didn't hear anyone talking about that part. To fund what budget? Set by who? With what oversight? Now, only a handful of times I heard that back in the day. However, it was spoken of. Now, I can't say it was spoken of outside of the Port Hannah City area. It was definitely spoken in the Port Hannah City area, uptown. Now, our kith and kindred back in the day out on my side of the city, they generally didn't talk like that. This was the uptown set. So when you fast forward to the modern era, and you have all these pop-up newest quote-unquote governments and newest alleged quote-unquote nations of the month, with these grandiose, platitude-filled, we a nation, we a government, or listen to what they say, and you will see exactly where they're at. And as I said, past is prologue. Seen it 1 trillion times. Everybody wants to be in charge. In charge of whom? With what credentials do you think you have? What qualifications do you think you have? What exactly do you do? What precisely do you think you know? And how can all that be used practically, sensibly, honorably, rightly, and justly to pull our kith and kindred as a whole, whether they are declared as a Moor or not, out of the madness imposed across this planet? This is where reality smacks folks in the face. It is one thing to say that parties have knowledge of self. It is one thing for parties to say that they should study about nationality and declare one. as opposed to merely quote-unquote proclaim. It is one thing for parties to speak to the issue of, well, we a nation. Most of them don't know what an actual nation is. Most of them don't know that a quote-unquote nation state is a fiction. They will use words like people, and people is a fiction. They use fictitious terms to describe the actual. As the Minister for the Customs always says, they fail to comprehend the distinction between the animate and the inanimate, the organic and the inorganic. Decades later, they're still doing that. And they wonder why. They get nowhere. They wonder why they are treated like mongrels on the international arena stage. They play costume. You can put on the garments, the head wraps, the turbans, the fezzes, the feathers. A Moor, that does not necessarily mean you are. You can dress up like one. Lacking is an issue. And parties will form their mouths to speak about things from one or two particular ancestors tied back to the Moor persuasion, as if there are not so many others. And they lock themselves in a box. Attempt to lock you in said box. And they bandy around terms they know nothing about. And their language gives them away. So, past this prologue, and when parties show their inflexibility tied back to what they keep in a particular box that you refuse to get into because you know better, because your circumference of knowledge is basically not tied back to almost 100 Earth years ago, although grasping was happening 500 Earth years ago, 2,000 Earth years ago, 75 Earth years ago, and right what's happening right now, and where things are going, and have operations planning predicated upon all of that, balancing old tech, the current, and the new tech, and tech on the horizon, and acting accordingly within your technical skill means, pushing the envelope in the process, but recognizing that as you go forward, always having redundancy from that which is what some would call old school, because the new tech can fail, the old tech can be reliable, however, it can be improved upon. Thus, the new tech, having the best of both, is not a bad thing. It's a practical and a sensible thing. But if parties won't even see you, won't even hear you, because you won't fall into what they keep in a specific parameter within a particular box, if it doesn't mesh with these ideas from one particular ancestor, and that means it cannot work, which is the most idiotic thing I've ever seen them continue to do. You can't say out of one side of your mouth that our ancestors had a global empire, and then you don't operate towards that. And then those of us that actually do engage on a global level, they mock and scorn, ignore, or run away from. because they're not doing it and they want to be in charge. But you have the technical skill, you have the actual ability, you're actually engaged in it, and you have a track record in it. And so the ego becomes the killer, and the selfishness kills just as many because they want to be in charge and do not have the institutional knowledge of being in charge. So they would rather consign themselves and their offspring to irrelevance. They would rather consign themselves and their offspring to looking backwards only and building nothing. They would rather consign themselves and their offspring to being beholden to colonizing hostiles for additional of their generations. Lacking plans has consequences. Lacking abilities has consequences. Failure to evolve has consequences. And parties are going to say that I am attacking, and I am not. This is a love scenario for them, for those who choose to see it. They won't confront it, but they cannot say it was not explained, laid out. And nothing that I'm saying, they don't see or don't know. They see it. They know it. They maintain it anyway. For some, it's a hustle. They think that nationality in the modern era is a hustle. For some, this is a cottage industry. So they create packages to quote unquote sell. And what they're operating on is a failing system that they know is going to fail, that the industry attached to it is going to stop. They plan not towards their own independent industries, commerce, or trade. And won't participate in ours. Because we don't stick ourselves in the box that they insist on remaining in. They will bite off their nose just bite their face on that one. Painful, hard truth. In a few minutes, it's going to be about access to water and food, independent of the colonizing hostiles. And those who fail to plan are going to pay for it. Those who fail to act are going to pay for it. And those who are the ignorant innocents who have no idea are going to suffer. Past really and truly is prologue.